Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Formula One's in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Sprint race done. We'll recap the sprint race, preview qualifying. NASCAR Cup Series at Martinsville Speedway. Last chance to get into Phoenix as part of the Championship 4. Jackson Todd from 36xracing.com is with me today. I'm Joe Samriego. A big thank you to our Patreon investors. Call the show Mark, Robin, David, Matthew for investing in the Grid Network. Link in the video description to invest through us in Patreon. And we appreciate if anyone buys me a coffee or YouTube super chat. We'll thank you on the air. Jackson, let's get started. Lando Norris feeling pretty good, but some might say he might be a bit lucky after today's race.
Yeah, Lando Norris, after today's sprint, he gained 2 points on Max Verstappen. It came down to a little luck at the end of the sprint. There was a virtual safety car for Nico Hülkenberg's engine issues and stopped car. However, the virtual safety car did not come out as quickly as many would have anticipated, allowing McLaren time to give some team orders and swap the positions of their drivers. Lando got around Piastri, and then we had the virtual safety car, leaving only about half a lap of green flag racing after the virtual safety car to the end of the sprint, meaning that Norris gained 2 points on Verstappen. So was McLaren lucky? This could have been a whole different situation if the virtual safety car timing was just a little different here or there.
And that's what I was thinking. As soon as we saw Nico Hülkenberg stop, I thought they got to make this move. The safety cars come in and just seem prolonged, and really, we did not see the virtual safety car display until you saw the 3 cars get around Hülkenberg, and he was walking on the track. Well, on the grass, but still, he was outside of his car, and I just thought, what's going on? Where's the virtual safety car? And then it showed up. So I do feel McLaren was very lucky in that aspect, that the timing, some might call it questionable. We can't question, well, we could question what the stewards were doing, but we can't put ourselves into their shoes of what's going on, the decision making. Overall, McLaren, I just feel if they're demonstrating which team is sort of becoming the Ferrari when it comes to managing your 2 drivers. We always talk about Ferrari being lacking the strategy department. When it comes to managing the drivers and team orders, McLaren is that team. They were talking about Lando Norris. You'll hold position till the last lap. That would have not worked. If that safety car had come out faster, Lando Norris would have been trying to defend Max Verstappen with half a lap to go. That could have been disastrous. We know how those 2 race each other. Then we see the virtual safety car. That's when finally, McLaren just finally, after it feels like weeks, Jackson, of just, we don't want to do anything. We don't want to. They just said, swap positions now. Yeah. Then they made it happen. It just, Come on, McLaren. You're the team boss. The drivers race for you guys. And let's be honest, even if there's something in Oscar Piastri's contract, like he is not the number 2, equal treatment, we're at the point now, it's like the championship's number 1. Lando Norris is in that position. You got to give Lando that fighting shot, because I really thought they blew it when Charles Leclerc had a mess up coming out of the 3 or 4, had a gap, and I thought this is their opportunity. Didn't happen. McLaren's just super lucky they ended up the way they did, and my goodness, they got to get their act together, because I feel the championship is somewhat over, but still, if Lando's going to have any shot at it, McLaren has to be better.
Yeah, I mean, this is what it takes, right? It takes, like, they have to take every point presented to them. It has to be about maximum points. It can't just be like beating Verstappen. It has to be like, we are beating him and we are making up significant ground. I mean, 40 points with just these few races left. I'm trying to catch somebody like Verstappen, who you assume is going to be, on the podium. It's hard to make up that much ground. So qualifying later today for Brazil, and it appears Red Bull, they brought another strong car, believe it or not. Verstappen was pressure on the McLaren drivers there in the sprints. Ferrari was further behind. Grand Prix, it's a different ball game. But that being said, Joe, is this Grand Prix, is it going to be McLaren versus Verstappen continued, or could a Ferrari or Mercedes get up in the hunt?
I think the Ferraris are going to be faster they're going to have the strategy. I feel surprisingly that might be one of their strengths from Ferrari is when it comes to the strategy. This year with Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, Fred Vasseur, they all seem to be just gelling really well when they're on top of their game. And I feel they could have a great opportunity. They have a fast car. The pace wasn't there, but I anticipate it's going to be up there in qualifying. Mercedes, I feel, is the wild card. We saw George Russell higher up towards the front. Lewis Hamilton made a great effort to gain positions. This is a track he's really good at, but it's a far cry from 2021, 2020, where he was almost unstoppable at this track, just going out there dominating it. Now that's just not the case anymore. And I just feel they're really the team we're going to be watching as to what they do in qualifying. I anticipate you'll see the McLarens in the front row, probably both of them, or at least one of them, the other one in the second row. Max is going to be up there, then the two Ferraris. Just by process of elimination, then you could see the Mercedes in that third row, but that's going to be really hard to say, and there could be a surprise. Liam Lawson, good qualifying effort. The Haas drivers, if their cars hold together, especially the engine, they've been getting up to Q3. And Alex Albon, after last week where I was questioning where is he, Franco's stealing the show. Great qualifying effort for the sprint, great race, finishes ahead, and overall, I think he could have a strong qualifying effort, be in Q3 as well too. So plenty of surprises, and this track always seems to have surprises throughout the weekend.
Definitely. All right. Wouldn't be an F1 discussion if we don't make Perez comments. He finished 8th in the sprint today, so he did score a point. Certainly not the Red Bull standard. He gained 5 positions, including getting around Liam Lawson, if you're going to make comparisons there. The rumor mill, this recent little stint, seems to be talking about Franco Colapinto possibly being considered for that seat. Perez has said he's going to be in Las Vegas and he's going to be back next year, but this feels like a pretty standard Formula One track. If you don't run well here, you're not going to run well in a lot of other places. So is this a place where he has to run well? Is this feel like a do-over? He's getting a lot of do-overs. And I can't help but note when you pull up the constructor standings and how tight it is at the top, every point that Perez is missing to Verstappen, those have really the total has run up very quickly in the Constructors' Championship picture. Suddenly it matters. Didn't matter a few years ago. It matters now.
It matters now, and he cannot keep having these do-overs after do-overs. I keep feeling we're talking about, oh, he has to do good at the street courses of Singapore, Azerbaijan to secure his future. He didn't. Well, he has to do good at Circuits of America, Mexico City, secure his future. He did it. And now people are saying, oh, he had a good sprint race. If he could do good here, he might be. When are we saying enough? You're third in the championship standings, Red Bull. You cannot just keep saying, well, let's see how it happens after Brazil and Las Vegas. Oh, let's see what happens at the end of the season. At that point, they're going to be too far behind if Perez cannot live up to the expectations that are placed on him because he's with Red Bull. Perez was second place in the Drivers' Championship last year. This year, he does not look like that kind of driver at all. You look at this track, he did really good at this track in the past. He had a pretty good day today. Qualifying is so important for him. He cannot have a qualifying effort where he's out in Q1. There's been too many times I feel a mistake prevents him from going into Q3, where it occurs in Q1 or Q2, some sort of mistake. He cannot have a mistake like that. He has to be in Q3. He has to be in the top 10. And even if, I'll be honest, he has not finished in the top 5 in such a long time, I believe Miami. If he scores points, 6th place, between 10th place, they still have to be talking about what do we do with him? How do we make a change? Liam Lawson's looking pretty good. Those two were battling each other. Of course, a lot of people were focused on that. Now you got Franco entering the rumor picture. This guy has gone from a driver that some folks were saying, who is this guy? To folks like Jessica, who was on the show. I was like, hey, this guy, he's pretty talented. You got to follow him. And now people are noticing. I just cannot see how Red Bull is just going to allow Perez another do-over. I have to say, this has to be really the last weekend. If you keep him in Las Vegas, what are you doing at that point? I feel like at that point, you're just sort of surrendering second place in the constructors unless Ferrari has a monumental collapse, which that does not appear to be happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm just clicking through here, just on the recent race result. I mean, this is unofficial. I'm just here clicking through, but I believe that the last time he finished in the top 6 was in the Netherlands in like mid-August. Like that. That's not
Wow.
if that's not something. If you're winning the constructors championship, those can't be the result. Even if it is your number 2 driver, no podiums in the last 2 months. That's not good.
Not good at all. And that's the thing, is just I really feel the confidence in him has gone away.
Yeah.
He needs to have a good start, really, a good start position. If he's in the top 10 and he does what he did today, pick up off driver, pick up position in the Grand Prix through pit stops, passes, this is a track he could do that magic. But I have to say, I just feel it's just too late because, yeah, no top 5 finish really since Miami. Then, as you said, no top 6 finish. What are we doing here, Red Bull?
Yeah. Tough. All right, we got qualifying later today, and then, of course, the Brazilian Grand Prix will take place tomorrow. Also, today we have NASCAR qualifying in anticipation of the huge elimination race at Martinsville. So, Joe, let's talk a little NASCAR now.
Yeah, NASCAR and the NASCAR playoffs. My goodness, Jackson, I am excited about Phoenix. Not so much the track, but just the championship picture. Of course, Logano, Reddick in the championship for at Phoenix. Bell is 29 points above the cut line. Many predict he's going to point his way in. He is 22 points ahead of William Byron, who won here in April, but that's his last win so far this season. Bell has won here in a must-win situation in the playoffs, so a lot of folks feel like he could still be a winning contender, but really, if he outscores Byron in stage points, he could finish 21st or better and get in. Do you believe, though, that Bell is safely in based on the points?
There is no safety in this format without one of those victory stickers on the side of your car. But Bell is safe in the sense that they can show up and do what they do, and it doesn't require. They can control their own destiny, which is really all you can ask for in this format. And instead of just being told, "Yeah, win or nothing," at least they can kind of go through their normal operations. He's good at Martinsville. He's got a 20-point cushion, like, looks good coming in. As long as they're running in the top 10, score a few stage points, they don't have to win the race, be at the top 10 at the end of the thing. It's all they have to do, and they can move on. And I think that's kind of, I don't want to say it's like definition Christopher Bell, but like I think the reason we don't hear a lot about Christopher Bell is because that's just what he does week in and week out. So as long as he can do it one more week, he'll be safe and on to Phoenix just fine.
I agree with you. I feel he is pretty safe. So really, if Bell is safely in by points, you have 5 drivers for one spot in the championship 4. And this is where I feel the chaos of this format. And this year, Byron, 7 points ahead of his teammate Kyle Larson, who is below the cut line. Both have won here, but you also have Danny Hamlin, who has won here. He is 18 points below the cut line. 2 stage wins, all of a sudden that 18-point deficit is gone if he could do that. Ryan Blaney, the defending champion, he won here last year. 38 points below the cut line, must-win situation. And Chase Elliott, who, of course, 2020, won here, then went on to get the championship, 43 points below the cut line. Another must-win situation. At that point, I feel like you might sacrifice the stage points just to put yourself in a better position for overall track position and to win. Of course, the cautions are really going to dictate that. But I got to ask you, do you feel like these drivers, all 5 of them, are really, you just got to go out there, win, because second place may not guarantee it? Is everyone in a must-win situation?
Oh, yeah. Everyone's been in a must-win situation since Las Vegas, and I think the round of 8, there's no good points. There's no good points day in the round of 8. There's either a bad points day where you get completely taken out, or you win the race and you're on to the championship 4. And I think, just going back to Las Vegas, like, the 22 team understood that. They knew they don't have a lot of playoff points. Like, they're going to have to win one of these 3 races if they want to make the championship 4. They saw the opportunity at Vegas, and the 22 took it. Last week at Homestead, we knew that everyone right there at the end, the battle between Hamlin, Blaney, and Reddick, we knew what that meant. Those are 3 guys that don't have – I mean, the only guys with a huge chunk of playoff points were Bell and Larson. Hamlin, Blaney, Reddick, they knew they were battling for their championship 4 spot right there. And it's going to be a similar atmosphere this week. It's a must-win situation for everyone, except for, I mean, we talked about Christopher Bell. And I think I guess we'll talk about it here in a second. But Kyle Larson throwing away a lot of points is really interesting, and I think that's all kind of coming back around this week. But yeah, other than Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson, it's been must win for everybody the whole time in my eyes. And then after the mistake last week by Larson late, this suddenly did become a must win race for him as well.
Must win situation for Kyle Larson. In the chat room, Adam, Hendrick Motorsports could get shut out the championship 4, but we've seen stranger things happen at Martinsville. And really, he brings up a good point, because after the Roval, Rick Hendrick was talking about having all 4 cars in the round of 8. Very proud day. No team has ever had the 4 cars in the championship 4, but then it just went downhill. Bowman gets DQ'd. This gives Logano a second chance. Logano wins the next race weekend in Las Vegas. He was below the cut line. The following weekend at Homestead, Reddick below the cut line gets the win. I mean, Reddick, Blaney, Hamlin, all below the cut line, top 3. Now they've gone from the 3 cars in the championship, round of 8. You only got 1 above the cut line. William Byron has not won since Martinsville here in April. Worst case scenario, Hamlin or Blaney wins and Bell points his way in. Hendrick Motorsports out of the championship 4, and that'll be a surprise. I remember you and Isha talking about Kyle Larson, the inconsistency, but he should still get in. Then Homestead, he just dropped the ball. How real is the possibility of no Hendrick Motorsports driver in the championship 4? And if that happens, this is a big year, the 40th anniversary. Does that spoil it? And do we see changes, particularly like crew chief drivers or some sort of way as they approach 2025?
It's so I want to sit on the Larson thing for a second, because it feels like Larson. It's very interesting how kind of in the regular season there's like different agendas, but they're very like straight up. It's either guys going for like the regular season championship, but even that's kind of like a B plot. Like, the priority is obviously winning races, and then when you get into the playoffs, everyone's mindset changes in all these races. I mean, like, it's like I was just saying, like, Logano's priority from day one was basically like, we have to win one of these 3 races. And then last week, Kyle Larson, it felt a little bit like I mean, Larson got caught up in the battle a little bit. Like, for Larson, when he had that many playoff points and he had, decent points on the day, like, just taking that second, I mean, you got to go for the win. But in terms of that specific move, the risk versus reward just wasn't there. And it's just got to be so frustrating this week, because everyone else finished, right there in the top 10. And that's like a 20-point jump. And he'd be right there closer to Bell than he is below Byron. Anyway, that being said, in terms of HMS as a whole, I would expect at least one of them, if not 2 of them, at advance. I think a Hendrick car is winning this week. I think it's probably going to be Larson. It might be Byron. There's a chance it's Elliott. That's kind of the way I would go down the line there. The top 3 in the spring, a 1, 2, 3 finish. That's huge. Even if, that was back in April and this is now. Finishing 1, 2, 3 with your 3 cars that are here trying to get a win, that's a pretty big deal. So yeah, I expect at least a Hendrick car to make it. In terms of confidence, that would kind of be the order I put them in. I would be most confident in Kyle Larson, and then William Byron, and then Chase Elliott. I think the only way that Byron makes it is if Christopher Bell wins the race, but Bell's not going to be going for the win. I think it's going to be. I think this is setting up for a Kyle Larson win, possibly knocking out his own teammate. That's kind of where I see this going. But that being said, as you said, it's very simple for this to switch. Ryan Blaney wins the race, and boom, there's no Hendrick car in the championship 4. So anything can happen. Martinsville is a great round of 8 elimination.
Now, I got to throw in a follow up question, a little bit of a wild card. We've seen in the past. We remember a few years ago when you had Logano. He had one of the prior two races in the round. Goes to Martinsville. Him and Brad Keselowski, teammates at the time, controlling the restarts, taking turns on who's leading until the infamous restart crash with Matt Kenseth, and then Kenseth taking out Logano. You have a situation where if Bell is up front, Denny Hamlin is second place, you have a late restart. Do you anticipate maybe a little bit of, hey, Bell, bigger picture, Hamlin really needs this win? Could that pop in at all, or do you think NASCAR is really going to be monitoring for any kind of team orders?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I don't even think. I think the risk at Martinsville is it's very high risk. Like if Bell's if you're I mean we're talking about like a restart scenario, right? I guess if they're 1-2 and maybe let somebody in line, but if you're in the middle of a stint and you try to let somebody by, it's hard to let somebody by at a Bristol, at a Martinsville, because there's always somebody else right behind them ready to slip through the same gap you just created. So I guess in terms of some team order shuffle that you could see going on, I mean, you think about Logano and Blaney as well, or maybe even Reddick with the Toyotas if it's possible. But I think it's just going to be, maybe you don't if you're going to give them a bump, maybe it's a more gentle bump. I'm not sure how much you can control that in the heat of the moment, and maybe you let somebody in line or you cut them a little bit more of a break, but. I just think it's hard to get out of that go mode. I think you've kind of it's the last non-championship race of the season. I think your team orders are a little bit out the window. Everyone's just fighting for their spots.
Fighting for their spots, and especially you have a race where there's low number of cars out. If still you got 30 plus cars running, be risky to make such a move, and then you could end up like Keselowski wrecked that year, and then later on Logano. So
yeah, it's not like Las Vegas last week where like Bubba can run the low line and then Reddick runs the high line, and then you just drift back up on the straightaway anyway. It's a little more complicated here.
And all this, of course, Martinsville. There's a reason why they put Martinsville in this spot. It's not Homestead, where at the end of the day, we saw a lot of beating banging yesterday in the Truck Series race, which drew criticism from some, including Hall of Famer Mark Martin, saying the ethics are gone. Xfinity Series race, that's coming up later today. We all remember last year, Richard Childress racing, essentially double eliminating themselves. And this generation of car, though, for the Cup Series has not produced the most exciting short track racing. We're relying on softer tires, changes to the aero. Overall, do you anticipate seeing the kind of racing like the Cup Series have traditionally seen, which is more tame than the trucks and Xfinity, because of the cars or the drivers? Because the drivers yesterday were something else.
Yeah, it was a little crazy, especially in the late stages of that truck race yesterday. But we've had this Martinsville race we've had for like a decade now, and it's really grown its own identity. And I mean there will certainly be some aggressive moves, but I don't think. I think the difference with the Cup Series is that it's the Cup Series, right? Like this isn't the Truck Series or even Xfinity, where it's a little bit more of. I mean, it's not. This is no development series. Like this is it. This is the show, and it's the career impacts are obviously like a lot bigger, and the season in and season out, like maintaining of the same roster of drivers in the Cup Series obviously adds an element. And then I mean all the other dynamics that flow through the Cup Series that maybe don't reach down in the same way down through trucks and Xfinity. So there will certainly be some desperate moves, and we know that the next gen hasn't produced, I guess, like the most fantastic racing product on the short tracks, but I think the situation that comes in Martinsville itself is going to create situations when you have storylines throughout the field of, if they can't pass, well, what are they going to do? Because they're going to have to find a way if they want to make the championship four. So it might get aggressive, but you're going to have to look for aggressive moves also, and how are what are you doing on pit stops? How are you using your pit stops? And then, playing the cautions the right way for you. So it's going to be desperate moves. Even if there aren't opportunities presented, under green flag racing, what are you doing in other situations? Oh, Joe, you're muted, I believe.
Muted up. One of the things, just a quick coffee break. One of the things I was mentioning with this race, the Truck Series, overall, that race was pretty chaotic. We're going to anticipate that. Martinsville allows the drivers to beat and bang, push, and get more physical than Homestead, Las Vegas. You wouldn't want that. Some memorable moments, of course, Logano pushing Martin Truex out of the way to get in the championship 4. Truex claimed he wasn't going to win the war. He just won the battle. But at the end, Logano still got the championship. Kevin Harvick failed to spin out Kyle Busch to get in the championship 4. The most famous or infamous one, the Hail Melon, replayed over and over and over. Now we have 5 drivers all desperately trying to get into championship 4, and all 5 of them have won the race here at Martinsville before. Do you anticipate any of them making a desperate move and unafraid to upset another driver like we saw yesterday in the Truck Series?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I would say there's going to be it might get a little crazy out there. I think the 2 that I might shout out, I guess in particular, I mean, like I said, I think it's going to kind of be a Hendrick. It'll be a Hendrick day, and then it would take some desperate moves from somebody else to maybe put themselves in a situation and be in contention for the win. So the 2 that I'll shout out would be, Ryan Blaney. Like after last week, he gets really. You can tell when he gets really passionate in the car, and then he kind of gets out and he's like, a little more cool, low key. But I have to imagine that some frustration from last week just has to be carrying over for Ryan Blaney. I mean, like, how would it not? I think he'll be driving I don't know, a certain type of way tomorrow. And I think Denny Hamlin also, like, he's I guess, this year, with the lawsuit and everything, it's a little different, but Denny's still having that villain role. He knows how people feel about him. I don't think he'd be afraid to make the move and get himself in the championship 4. Those would be 2 that I'd keep an eye on, I guess.
Those 2, I think, are 2 can definitely keep an eye on. Chase Elliott, I think it was dependent, like if it's Denny Hamlin, should we know those 2 have a little bit of history? Maybe. I just don't see Kyle Larson doing anything to really, especially upset another driver. He does not like confrontation. And I feel these drivers compared to the Truck Series drivers, Xfinity Series drivers, where we know in the Xfinity Series, I believe it was Chandler Smith that said he's going all broke for the championship because if he may not be in a ride next year. So it's going to be really interesting how he's going to race today. Very desperate. All these drivers, the 5 of them, I don't see any of them being in a situation where this is a career-defining moment to keep their spot in this field. With that said, though, with those drivers, let's focus outside of the top 8, outside the playoffs for a second. 17th place, of course, this is the first place outside the playoffs that started with 16. Buescher has it right now, 11 points ahead of Bubba Wallace. Only 11 positions then. Bubba Wallace, 18th place. He got around Ross Chastain, who is now in 19th, 35 points behind Buescher, essentially. So overall, not a lot of points between these 3 drivers. They'll love to be that first driver highest up from the playoff drivers. But Martinsville, which driver has that advantage to leave in 17th and enter Phoenix with an advantage?
Yeah, the best the non-playoff driver battle is always interesting. I mean, not that it's a nice prize to go for. You can play through some what if scenarios if they've gotten a win in the regular season. But in terms of the best driver from that group, I'm looking at Bubba Wallace this week. He finished 4th in the spring, which is notable because it was behind the Hendrick Motorsports 1, 2, 3. So while they were running in a different league, Wallace was the best of the rest that weekend. Set some good races on the short track since. I forget which ones I checked, but I think it's like 2 or 3 straight top 5s on short tracks, which is, a great sign. It's, again, kind of one of those things, you'd expect, kind of like last week. The playoff drivers are going to kind of win and run their own show. But in terms of that best of the rest, the non-playoff drivers, Bubba Wallace is somebody I'd expect to have a good day, maybe have that advantage heading into Phoenix.
Bubba Wallace, interesting. I was thinking maybe Ross Chastain, especially after the Hail Melon, but Trackhouse does not seem to be 100% there like in the past years. And of course, with Trackhouse, Daniel Suarez, he made it into the playoffs. He is ahead of Ty Gibbs in the playoffs right now. Ty Gibbs is 13th behind Suarez. Cindric, who is ahead of both of them in 11th. Not a lot of points between those three. Are you surprised, though? Because the last few weeks it just seems to been the fall of Ty Gibbs. Can he rebound and get ahead of Suarez and Cindric, which I think a lot of folks anticipate he would be automatically ahead and by quite a bit more?
Yeah, I think honestly the Ty Gibbs season as a whole is pretty interesting to me. I think, once we get here into the off season, you can, take a little bit more time to reflect on, individual storylines and look at it with the full picture. I'm gonna take a long look at Ty Gibbs' season. But in regards to this week, I have not loved what I've seen out of Ty Gibbs on the short tracks this year. That just doesn't seem to be his strength. I would expect Bubba Wallace to finish ahead of all three of these guys for what it's worth. But I think the advantage between these three this week, it might go to Cindric. But yeah, I guess I am surprised by the fall of Ty Gibbs. He had a really great start to the season. And I think maybe that, I don't know if it built expectations or it just kind of led things in the wrong direction in terms of, where we think he should be placing. This is just a sophomore season. I talk about 100 starts all the time. He's not there yet. He's getting close. I think he's going to have a breakout season next year. Just a solid final 2 weeks would be good for Ty Gibbs, I think.
Good 2 weeks. Of course, we all know last year the circumstances of the last 2 weeks where he was very much all over the place as a rookie. The year before that, a really rough 2 weeks with the championship of the Xfinity Series, a drama there, and then of course the passing of his father at Phoenix 2 years ago. I think he would love to just have a good solid 2 weeks and just start to get some positive momentum because I really thought he was going to get at least a couple wins. He was a couple times my pick a winner, and we know he got him close to a couple of wins, especially Atlanta seemed to slip away. How different a win could have been and continue his playoff run for Ty Gibbs. It's just a matter of one position. Winning that race means everything for Martin Truex Jr. He wants to win one more race before he calls it a full-time career. But he is a bit behind Alex Bowman, quite a bit. Alex Bowman comfortably in 9th place. Of course, after the round of 8, he can move up, and he's been consistent. Talk about a consistent driver in the playoffs. Truex, when you compare him to Bowman, only has one top 5 finish, one top 10 finish in the playoffs. Bowman, if you're not counting the disqualification, only 2 finishes outside the top 10. More and more in the top 10. With Truex retiring for full-time competition at the end of the year, Bowman, very consistent. He's going to be back next year. Do you see Bowman or Truex winning this weekend or at Phoenix?
Short answer, no. I think unfortunately Truex kind of missed his chance for that. It's his last win kind of moment, like Matt Kenseth had, and others. I've had moments like that. Think about Jeff Gordon, kind of that Martinsville race in 2015. Obviously, with some interesting circumstances around that one. But yeah, I don't see either of them winning this weekend or next week at Phoenix. It seems like the playoff teams are really hitting on all cylinders in this round, and I'd expect that to continue. I was talking about Hendrick, but I don't think there's a scenario. Well, I guess there is a scenario where somehow Alex Bowman ends up running for the win, and the other Hendrick cars are like, "Hey, Alex, please win this to save us a spot in the Final Four." I guess Bowman could win under that scenario. I guess the same is also true for Martin Truex Jr. in some scenario, but I think that is kind of the only way that they would end up winning this week, or I guess next week. It would take some kind of weird flip the field kind of decision thing, but I don't see it happening on pure speed.
Pure speed, yeah, I don't see it happening. Maybe Bowman. The one thing I've been curious about, Jackson, is we've seen how last year Ross Chastain went out there, got the win at Phoenix, and he didn't care about the championship. Drivers like, I don't care. I'm trying to get the win.
Mm-hmm.
This year, up until Reddick, the only playoff drivers to have gotten wins were Logano, Larson multiple times, then finally Reddick broke through. Unless we have something completely crazy occurred today, tomorrow, I think he's going to be a playoff driver, most likely getting the win. Phoenix, though, I'm curious, especially since there's only 4 playoff drivers. Maybe we'll get a non-playoff driver winning. Yeah. It's very interesting to see how this will all shape up. And of course, with that said, it's time for us to pick who we think is going to win these races. Pick a winner. We're down to less than 15 races. MotoGP, Formula One Sprint are out of the way. This is the scoreboard going in. It looks like Matthew Bro is going to be the pick a winner champion. And still Kobe trying to make a very last minute surge. I mean, realistically, if we had a playoff system in the top 8, that might get people more. But I think that'll be something where we don't want to discuss that until maybe at the end of the season. But overall, check.
Yeah, I don't think you can implement that in the final 3 weeks of the year.
Yeah, that would be a mess. So with that said, we still have 3 races to go this weekend. So Jackson, let's start off. Formula One, Brazilian Grand Prix. Of course, qualifying is going to be later today, but we saw how good the McLarens are looking. Potentially Red Bull. Ferrari, we don't know. Who do you think is going to win the Brazilian Grand Prix?
Yeah, I got to go with Max Verstappen. I think, we're kind of teetering on this edge of the Drivers' Championship between Max and Lando. But I think Max wins the Grand Prix on Sunday, and I think that kind of reminds everyone that, oh yeah, we're still in the Verstappen era. Don't worry.
It's still a Max Verstappen show occasionally, and even what he's doing with the car, we could still see it. How he has that talent. I'm thinking though, I might go with Oscar Piastri. Ooh. Just because we saw that speed. The big thing is, my opinion, he just needs to have a much better start, get away from Lando, because if Lando's not directly behind him, don't worry about the points back. Don't worry about team orders. Just go out there, get the win. But that's still a very iffy. MotoGP. So they had their big sprint race earlier today, and big update, Pecco did crash out with 8 laps to go. So, of course, that was a huge break for Jorge Martin, who, of course, Jorge Martin in Malaysia got the win. When it comes to MotoGP, who are you looking at? Is it Jorge Martin? Do you think Pecco could rebound or somebody else?
My old reliable pick in MotoGP is Jorge Martin. So I'm going to keep it going again this week.
Jorge Martin is a good pick. Second place, Marc Marquez. I was torn between the two, but I think Martin is probably going to have the upper hand, and he could really almost seal the deal when it comes to the MotoGP championship. With that said, let's go to the championship closing championship round of 8. Set up the championship 4, Martinsville. So many moving pieces. You got the 5 must-win drivers in the playoffs. You got the rest of the field. Who do you see winning a Martinsville grandfather clock?
Yeah, I've kind of been building to it through the whole show, but I mean, I'm just going to go all in here. Kyle Larson is going to win tomorrow. It might be a complete domination, or it might be, showing up in stage 3 and just putting the hammer down. But I expect Larson to get the job done tomorrow. And then I think, we've kind of, but it feels right. It feels like how it's felt the whole time, right? Like it's been Larson and Bell. You can kind of assume we're making the championship 4. And then it felt like it was going to be Reddick or Byron, and it's Reddick. And then someone else is going to take that 4th spot. So Larson, Bell, Reddick, Logano is your championship 4. That feels right. A Larson win here this weekend feels right. All signs point to a Kyle Larson win this week for me.
Kyle Larson win will be big. I'm going to go with a driver that's going to try to get a big win, especially for his fan base. And it's funny because I was not going to go with this pick until we saw the Dodgers win the World Series.
Oh,
Last time they do that, 2020. Who went to Martinsville in the must win, got the championship? Chase Elliott. I don't know how the LA. I don't follow stick and ball sports, so I don't remember who's the NBA champion. I don't think it was the LA Lakers, but I think Chase Elliott's gonna surprise everyone, get a win, get his fan base excited, and leave everyone sort of in shock. But it's gonna be really interesting to see if he could do that. In the chat room, Adam's going with Martin. Wraps up the championship. Lando Norris, Denny Hamlin. So overall, we got a good selection of drivers across the board.
Yeah, it's a fun time in racing right now. This like season's almost over, but like title hunts are still going. It's a good time. It's a good time.
Really good time, and it'll be interesting if MotoGP Championship wraps up. That looked like it was going to be one of the closest ones. So we'll see what Martin could do. The pressure's there. World Rally Championship, DAC Championship coming down to the final race between two teammates. Formula One, well, it seems to be a little bit more lopsided. Unless Max like DNFs the next two races, which don't think that's going to happen if Lando could win them both. But very exciting time. Encourage everyone to subscribe, hit the bell icon so you don't miss our wrap-up show tomorrow. Of course, Grid Encore Monday, and of course, Grid tonight. And we'll do this all over again next weekend for the championship deciding race in the NASCAR Cup Series. And we still have Formula One, World Rally, MotoGP to go. Thank you, calling the show, Mark, Robin, David, Manage, for investing in us each and every week, keeping us on the air. For Jackson Todd at 36X Racing, I'm Joe Samdiego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the race.